Gen Z is anyone born roughly between 1995 and 2012. And to better understand these 20-somethings, Spotify conducted a study last June. The report says Gen Z is in touch with its emotions and thinks it's important to express them. It's also transnational in musical taste. In fact, Gen Z listens to more international music than any other demographic. Youth Pulse, a research and consulting service that focuses on Gen Z, says the group's music is hard to pin down, as it's genreless, borderless, eclectic and global. The organization gives Billie Eilish as a prime example, as her music is often cited as fluid and difficult to categorize.
You know I'm not your friend without some greenery.
Wired magazine's Jason Parham compared millennials to Gen Z. He says a millennial has a taste for shameless maximalism in their music, but Gen Z music is more about finding a creative balance and staying put. It's said that Generation Z is shaped with social media and globalization. Their inward focus manifests itself in song lyrics that tackle body image and self-love topics to accomplish mental health. And as studies show that they're also singing about melancholy topics like many other young generation before them have, Gen Z seems to try to find a more positive solution to their problems.
Just drinking canned Coke. I don't need a Zenny to feel better.
To fine-tune our understanding of Gen Z and its musical taste, Christodoulou joins me from London. He's a senior lecturer at the Westminster School of Arts. Chris, thank you so much for your time. It would be easy to assume that Gen Z is perhaps much more serious with their musical taste. There's such a focus on politics and social issues. Do you think that's a correct assumption?
I think it's a good assumption, absolutely. I mean, Gen Z is a generation, let's say, from the age of about 10 to their early 20s. They've had to grow up with a kind of legacy of climate change and the post-2008 economic crisis. So they have a more serious engagement with the world more generally, actually.
I mean, music has always been a way for younger generations to agitate for political change, for social change. Is this any different, or is it just that it's more on a global scale?
I think that's right. I think it is more on a global scale. Gen Z is also the generation that has grown up with smartphones and the internet. So they're accustomed, they're used to engaging with people from around the world for various kind of cultural activities and interests, and popular music is just one of them. So it's really engaging with, enjoying K-pop is no different to listening and enjoying to a band or a group or a genre that would be much closer to their national groupings. So absolutely, pop music is far more global than it has been in the past.
How has social media and streaming services affected Gen Z's musical taste and perhaps influenced it?
Certainly, I mean, Gen Z is very used to engaging with streaming services and platforms and using the playlist approach to finding new music. So it's whereas perhaps previous generations of kind of youth culture would have looked at genres and styles, Gen Z is much more dynamic, looks at musical taste in a more transient and changeable way. And so certainly apps and streaming platforms have played a big role in connecting people to their moods and finding popular music on the basis of moods, perhaps, rather than genres or styles.
Does that connectivity then allow it to be more global? I mean, there was a time when English language songs really did dominate, but we're seeing now things like K-pop, J-pop, they're becoming much more mainstream.
Absolutely, yes, and J-pop and K-pop are really good examples. They're also subcultures and youth cultural groupings that exist not just in terms of music, but also costume, cosplay, fashion. There's connectedness to video game and, let's say, sort of manga animation. And these are now global subcultures. They aren't necessarily just restricted to, let's say, East Asia. So absolutely, those musical styles are connected to these other forms, these other more visual forms that are also very global in their outlook.
Gen Z speaks a lot in their music about mental health issues, about self-love, and that's been one of the positives that people have said comes out of this generation's musical taste. Is that any different to other eras, or is it just more that now talking about mental health issues has also become more mainstream, or are they trailblazers?
I think it has become more mainstream. I think also because this generation has really been brought up with the internet and smartphones, where these kinds of conversations take place on a far more regular basis than perhaps they would have done in the past. You could argue this generation is far more open to talking about issues around mental health or identity politics than perhaps previous generations of popular music would have done. And again, that connects with the time. They're having to deal with these issues perhaps that previous generations wouldn't have had to in the same way. And they have their medium now, and they're able to do it via social media and via the internet.
Younger generations always get a bad rap for being flippant, for not being as sophisticated in their musical styles as the generations that go before. But here, we're seeing a generation that's really engaging politically, socially, in a mental health level in their music. Do they have a more mature musical taste than previous generations?
I wouldn't say that the musical tastes are necessarily more mature, but there is much more of an alignment between music and, say, the issues that you were talking about.
Okay. Christodoulou from London, thank you so much for that very interesting breakdown on Gen Z and their music taste.